Hi everyone, Eileen Johnson here with you. In case you've never seen me before, I am a career strategist to high achieving, badass women who are looking to upgrade their careers so they can elevate their lives. So today what I'm going to be talking about are the 5 ways that you can water the grass where you're standing so you can finally land that dream job that you've been dreaming about. So before we jump into the content, I always like to check in with you and have people let me know, is this your first time joining me? If so, where are you joining me from? If you're a return watcher, where are you coming at me from? I always like to welcome people back and welcome the new people and have you here with me. So I do apologize quickly that I didn't do the live that I was planning to do yesterday, but hopefully it's worth the wait, and we're going to deliver it here to you today instead. So first of all, let's review what we've discussed so far this week. So on Monday, what I talked about was how people will mentally and emotionally check out of their current job because they no longer view it as a position that they want. So they end up dragging themselves into work, they clock in, they clock out, they do just enough to get by, but they are definitely not the best employee that they know they're capable of being. And so while it's tempting to follow into this pattern, it is also super dangerous. So on Wednesday, I talked about the 3 biggest problems with doing this. And number 1 is that you will always be the first to get the axe, either by getting fired because you're underperforming or you're going to get laid off. And then number 2 is if you don't change your current situation, you are almost bound by the laws of the universe to repeat them. Because remember, highest energy always wins. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure you watch the replay from Wednesday. And then number 3, you can get yourself into desperation mode. And rather than being careful and thoughtful and choosy about where you go next and deciding what you're running toward, you jump ship as soon as the next opportunity comes by, whether it's the right opportunity or not. And that usually leads to repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. So here's the deal. The real solution to make sure that you don't repeat the same patterns that you've been doing for the rest of your career isn't just to go out and get your next perfect opportunity. The real solution is that you need to show that you can be trusted with the position that you already have. You need to invest in your current job like it is the only one you are ever going to have. And I know, this may feel like the exact last thing you want to be doing when all you want to be doing is get the hell out of there, right? But remember what we talked about on Wednesday. Until you change your current energy and how you are showing up, you will never be trusted with something bigger and better than what you already have. Does that make sense? With me kind of so far? Okay. So let's look at the 5 things that you can do starting today to make sure that you're nurturing your current job so that you can finally be trusted to move into that dream job that you so deeply desire. So number 1, you need to think like an entrepreneur. No, I'm not saying that you need to be an entrepreneur, but you need to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an entrepreneur. So here's the difference between the two, is that employees tend to just kind of dial it in. They clock in, they clock out, they do the minimum to get by so that they don't get fired. And, I'm not saying that everybody that's an employee does this, but I think you can kind of recognize, and you've seen it before, what this traditional mindset of an employee looks like. So then on the other hand, entrepreneurs will invest everything they have in their work. Just think of an entrepreneur that you know. What are they willing to do for their business? From the ones that I know, they're willing to do just about anything. They will invest their mind, their energy, their heart, their soul, their blood, their sweat, their tears, everything. So now imagine for a second if you and every other person you worked with and for invested in their work like an entrepreneur invested there. What would be possible? I mean, when you almost think about it in those terms, what wouldn't be possible? So understanding the power that can be unleashed when you act like an entrepreneur, do you see the difference that might make on how you show up at work? I'd love to hear in the comments, and feel free to share. What do you think would be different if you showed up at work 100% invested like an entrepreneur? What would be possible? Just take a minute even just to think about that. What would be possible? What could be different? How do you imagine people would interact with you differently if that was the way you showed up? So you might be asking, what are some practical ways that you can implement this entrepreneur mindset? So here's some things to think about. If you owned a business and you went into the bathroom and you realized that you were out of toilet paper, would you feel sorry for the next sucker that comes in who's not going to have any toilet paper? Or would you refill that toilet paper roll? Now, if you walked in the front door of your business, would you ignore everyone on your way to your desk? Or would you say hello to your colleague, Kate, and ask her how her sick dog is? If you own the business, would you let a confused customer wander around and it's clear that they're looking for something? Would you just let them go, or would you walk right up and ask how you can be helpful? So these might not be the exact situations that occur at your work, but you see that it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't need to revamp the entire marketing strategy for the next year to think like an entrepreneur. It really starts by looking at how you can add value in big and small ways. Are you seeing how this mindset shift could actually change how you show up at work and maybe how you interact with your boss and your colleagues and your customers? Do you see that? Okay, now let's look at the next thing. But before you do that, I just want to check in for those of you who are just joining and talk about what it is that we're talking about today, which is the 5 ways that you can water the grass where you're standing right now. And I just covered the first one, which is to start to think like an entrepreneur instead of an employee. Now, number 2, you've likely heard the advice out there to dress for the job that you want, not the one that you have. And so number 2 is similar to that, and it's act as if you already have the job that you want. So remember from Wednesday how important mindset is and putting your attention and energy on what it is that you want? Well, what if you use this to your advantage and started acting as if you already have the job that you desire? What would you do differently? Would you dress differently? Would you engage in meetings differently? Would you interact with your colleagues differently? Maybe you'd express yourself differently. Think about all those things you would do differently if you were already that version of yourself that has the next job. And then start doing those things. Seems too easy to actually work, doesn't it? Well, why don't you give it a try and see? What's it going to hurt? Try it out, see what happens. So let's just do a quick recap of those for those of you who are just joining. Today I'm talking about the 5 ways that you can water the grass where you're standing so you can finally land your dream job. And so far I've covered number 1, which is to start thinking like an entrepreneur instead of an employee. And number 2, which is to act as if you already have the job that you want. So now on to number 3, nurture your relationships. Did you know that your colleagues and your customers and your boss and everyone that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis may be your best connection to your next opportunity? And if you didn't already know this, you are missing out on an insanely valuable resource sitting right under your nose. I want to tell you a story about a woman that I recently met. Her name is Jane, who was part of a major layoff at her company. But over the years, she told me that she had worked really hard to establish really great rapport with her colleagues, and she became really well known and well respected because she was a dedicated, hard-working employee. She acted like an entrepreneur. And another colleague who had also been laid off ended up landing a position at this great company. And a few months later, another position at that company became available, and the first person they thought of was her. So I tell you the story to show you that if you aren't nurturing the relationships you are right now, the ones that are right in front of you, you will never know what opportunities you might be missing out on. All right, on to number 4. You need to find ways to add value. It's very similar in a lot of ways to acting like an entrepreneur, thinking like an entrepreneur. This is a little bit different. This is, you need to be able to figure out how you can add value and how you can make sure that you do your work well. And you need to find ways to release your boss's stress and find ways to grow the business. That is how you can add value. All right, and before I get to the last one, for those of you who are just joining me, I'm talking about the 5 things you can do to make sure you're watering the grass where you're standing so that you can land your dream job. So far I covered number 1, which is to think like an entrepreneur instead of an employee. Number 2 is to act as if you already have the job that you want. And number 3 is to nurture your relationships. And number 4 is to add value and to be valuable. All right, let's move on to number 5, the last one. You need to be appreciative. I know. You are likely somewhere that you don't love. But again, if you don't find things to appreciate in this position, you're only going to attract more of what you're putting attention on, the things that you don't want. So find things to be appreciative of in your current situation. Maybe it's that you have your own office so that you can work in a quiet environment. Maybe it's that you love your colleagues. Maybe it's that your company has like a kick-ass lunchroom where you can look out the window when you're eating your lunch. Whatever it is, make sure that you're recognizing the things that you can appreciate in your current circumstances. So, I recommend that you don't just keep those things to yourself too. Tell your boss how much you appreciate the opportunity to work there. Tell your colleagues how much you appreciate their creative ideas. Tell the receptionist how much you appreciate that he always delivers your messages to you quickly and accurately. So the more that you focus on what you can appreciate in your current situation, the more positive energy you will bring into your life. So if you couldn't tell, I could probably go on and on and on about this topic, but I'm going to cut myself off at these 5 things. So let's just do a final review. Here are the 5 things that you can do starting today to make sure that you're watering the grass where you're standing so that your dream job can become part of your reality. So number 1 is to start thinking like an entrepreneur instead of an employee. Number 2 is to act as if you already have the job that you want. Number 3 is to nurture your relationships. Number 4 is to add value. And number 5 is to be appreciative. So I know it might not be sexy and it might not be what you want to do, but I promise that if you implement these 5 strategies alone for 1 week, you are going to notice a huge difference in the way that you feel, how people are responding to you and engaging with you, how productive you are, and other ways that I might not even be able to imagine. Maybe you can't even imagine. And I always say, besides, what do you have to lose? If you aren't happy where you are right now and you don't want to be repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again, maybe it's finally time to try something different. What is the worst thing that can happen? All right, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have any questions about what I've shared with you so far? Please go ahead and type them in the comments box. Even if you're not joining me live, put them in there. I will respond to them. Whenever they come in. I always love to hear from you guys. I love to hear, what's landing for you, maybe what's not landing for you, any insights that you've gained from this, any aha moments, whether they be teeny or huge, you can share them with me as well. So I want to thank you for joining me today and throughout this week. And if you found this information helpful and you want to be notified the next time I go live, or if you want to just be notified when the replays are available, I'm going to put a link in the comments box here. And you can sign up to be notified when that happens. It's a great way to make sure that you don't miss anything. And I always love to be able to stay in contact with you as well. So I'm Eileen Johnson with EileenJohnsonCoaching.com, where I help corporate women transform their careers so they can elevate their lives. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and an awesome weekend. And I want you to go forth and be a badass. I'll talk to you guys soon.